All right, we are live. Welcome to another episode of Monday Night Live on the 10 Horse Monty YouTube channel. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We're going to talk winter fishing because it's definitely turned into winter. Just
real quick, like
fall, and then it was like winter and snow, and
it was like it wasn't even fall. It was early fall. Because I had shorts. I had shorts on last week.
Well, it was 70 and 78 or something.
Possibly flip flops a couple days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was interesting, man.
Wednesday, I think it was, or wasn't it last week?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I did some research because I was asking people, do you ever remember it snowing the day after, like on the 12th is when it happened. And I did a little bit of research, and it has happened. There's definitely some documentation if you Google it, but it's still pretty rare. It's fairly rare.
So I remember growing up as a kid, though. We say that. So this past weekend was opening weekend of gun season for deer in Missouri, and I remember, gosh, now as a kid it seemed like every gun season, but I couldn't tell you if it was or not. It seemed like every gun season it was always bitterly cold or there was snow on the ground for opening day of deer season. But that's.
Yeah, but don't they move deer season around quite a bit?
Not really. It's usually first or second weekend in November.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember some snow on the ground too, and I deer hunted.
Yeah. So it has happened this time of the year, but it's not like you said.
We forget.
Well, in the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, we haven't had but one like crazy early snow, and then the rest of it happens in January, February, and March. And I mean, we had snow after my wife and I's anniversary a couple years ago, and we got married in April. So,
yeah. I remember snow on Easter.
It's kind of like the whole weather pattern has shifted later in the year.
Yeah. So, well, we had this year in May, like the middle to the last part of May, we had about 4 or 5 days of mid 90-degree weather.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that? It got like super like summer African hot, and it cooled off a little bit.
Yep.
So right now we're early or the middle of November, and we've got this cold weather. So I'm thinking maybe we'll get like a little bit of an Indian summer.
Yeah.
Maybe next week or the week after. And then it'll, move into like a traditional winter pattern.
Well, heck, you say that. So Christmas last year, it was like 75 here.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I remember that.
So
it's just. I were fishing at the end of December, and it was warm. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
When we did the spoon video.
Yeah, I do. I remember that.
Water or something like that. I rewatched that video the other day. We had mid 50-degree water temperature.
Okay.
Yeah, and which is about what it is today. Yeah, after this cold weather, I had 58 today up front.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, Ron, do me a favor.
Yep.
Close out of that link. And then come back in because you're getting some static in your feed.
Okay.
So just close out and come back in, and maybe that'll clear up the static. And so we asked the question, what's everybody's favorite cold water bait? And go back up here to the top and see what everybody chimed in. By the way, a little shout out to the people that support this channel real quick before we get into it. Sorry, got a little text there. Just making sure that wasn't Ron. Baitworks. If you guys haven't heard of Baitworks, go check out Baitworks. They have a brick and mortar store in Springfield, Missouri, and they also have an online site, and they're growing every day. They're getting new stuff in stock. You can use the code THM10, get you 10% off your order. And in the description box there, use that link to get you on the site. And that's a great way to help out the channel a little bit. Also Cumberland Pro Lures, Winning Edge Fishing, Hawgz Custom Baits, and Bag 5 Custom Baits. All folks that have been helping us the last couple of years, and we really appreciate it if you go out and check them out and support them. Also, Bahio sunglasses. If you guys are looking for some quality sunglasses, check out. It's Bahio. I always want to say Bahio, but it's Bahio. It means shallow water in Spanish.
Let me see it. Unless you're from Southeast Missouri, it's like
Baggio. So check out all those companies and support the local companies. Support the small guys. Let's see. Oh, Fishing Junkie says rubber worm.
Favorite cold water bait.
Favorite cold water bait. Pole bender. I like this one. Texas rig, Zoom speed crawl. Got my deer stick and mug of homebrew. I'm ready. Nice. Russ is a jerkbait guy. Yeah, we're not too far from that jerkbait. I start picking that jerkbait up probably.
Is it getting close?
Low 50s. About the time the frog bite stuff starts going away.
Has it went away yet?
I don't know, man. I was over at the local pond Sunday, I think it was Sunday, and I threw a frog for an hour and a half. I never got a bite on it.
Across the river? Really?
Yeah. Yep. I think it was Sunday.
Might be going away.
It was just a weird day.
Yeah, but I mean, I think right now it's gonna take a weather event like rain or something to get that bite to go back again.
I don't know, man. It felt right.
Did it?
It felt right, but it wasn't happening. There was bait moving around. There was fish swirling on the outside of the grass.
You know how that goes though. Like an hour and a half isn't a ton of time in the grand scheme of things, right?
Yeah.
Like because with that frog bite, it's you typically, as we move farther along in the season, it's a 5 bite.
Yeah,
bait.
that's true.
It's not a.
But I went through some choice areas
that you knew you would get
that I think I should have got a sniff or something.
Did you catch anything else in the grass? I
had to fish a mini max, the new chatterbait.
Yeah.
So I have a little video coming out on that, and then I caught some fish on a underspin. I caught some fish on a spinnerbait.
Okay.
So it's like they were out of the grass. They weren't really up in it.
I think they've been like that all year though. Like there's only been a handful of days that I've really caught them up in the grass. It seems like they've been just hanging out on the edge.
Yeah.
I don't know what that changes this year.
Have you been playing around in the grass over there much, Ron?
Outside edge.
Okay.
Edge. Not the problem at Egypt is the mats are not, Cedar, basically the whole lake has mats. At Egypt, they're limited, so they get a lot of pressure. So trying to deal with the pressure, we've been trying to be a little bit different. And so we've been focusing more when fishing shallow, the outside edge of the. So, and I heard you mention jerkbait. It's been working for about 3 weeks over here. Jerkbait.
Okay.
It works 12 months a year. It's just kind of, actually, that's a stupid thing to say. It works 12 months a year, but the water's really clear this year in the creeks. We haven't any rain to speak of. So that clear water really adds to that jerkbait bite.
How dirty is too dirty for you to throw a jerkbait, Ron?
That's a good question. It depends on if the lake's been dirty for a long time or if it's new dirty water. If it's new dirty water, I don't throw jerkbait's probably not going to work very well for me. But if the lake's had stain for a long time and the fish are used to it, you can get away with pretty dirty water and a jerkbait, if you use the right colors or whatever. But in general, I like clear water for a jerkbait in general. Have you guys seen that red jerkbait on that Stunna, the red Fire Tiger one? That's a good dirty water bait.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is. I'm pretty sure I ordered a couple of them last year.
Yeah,
they just haven't came in yet.
They're over there in that.
I know.
They're over there.
I see your base.
27 boxes over there. I don't know where they're at. They're over there though. I promise you. I was trying to find some Gambler burner crawls the other day, and I know I've got a couple packs of them, but I went through. I don't know. I went through like 12 boxes, and I was getting ready to leave to go to the lake, and I guess I didn't go through the right ones because I didn't find them. I know they're over there somewhere.
I did my annual cleanup, which I told you that a couple weeks ago. Kind of emptied out some of the boat, some of the stuff that kind of collects in the corner of the garage throughout the seasons, and I found stuff that I shouldn't have that many of because it seems like every time I go to the store, it's like, oh, they got these here. I think I need some of those, and I got home and there's like 75 packs of plum old monster worms. It's like, why do you keep buying them? I mean, there was a period of time that it seemed like every time I'd go to Academy, I'd just buy everything that they had. Like if they had 7 on the shelf, I bought 7 of them. It was more defense. Like just keep them all to myself. Nobody else can do it.
Yeah.
Well, there was such a shortage there for a while. You know, it was like
Well, yeah, through COVID, it was.
Couldn't find toilet paper. You couldn't find chicken breasts. You couldn't find old monster worms.
Yeah,
It was
I mean,
like
the
across the board, there's
necessities.
stuff
You get the
missing.
3 necessities right there.
Yeah.
Chicken, toilet paper, and old monster worms.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about working with Baitworks. It's just getting started, and it's going to grow. It's going to grow. I got a real good feeling about that company. I think they're real ambitious. They plan on growing, and I'm glad to be a part of it. What's up, Darius? Good to see you. Yeah, back to jerkbait fishing. It is it's something that we always forget works all year long, like you were saying, Ron. And
it does.
Me personally, I limit it to the colder water. And I actually this year I've had it out more on my deck of my boat than I have the past couple of years. And I'll pick it up and throw it every once in a while.
So I had the
forward sonar.
Yep, exactly. 100%.
I'll say I've had the jerkbait on the deck all year. We're in place of an underspin, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I've been seeing, I don't know if you've seen this, and you probably have, but a couple times that I've been out recently, you'll see your fish down deeper, but then you'll see some fish sitting there in like 5 foot. Like, you know, your boat's in 25, 26 foot of water, and the fish are down there on the bottom or they're mid depth. And then all of a sudden you'll see some fish that are just sitting like 5 foot below the surface of the water. They're just up there cruising kind of high. I guess they're sunning or whatever. That's where I've been picking up that jerkbait and making a cast. And so far they've like swam away from 100 miles an hour, but I still keep it on the deck just in case.
Frank's got one that I'm starting to throw a little bit more this time of the year as we get into that early cold weather season is lipless.
Mm-hmm.
So
bass season. I wonder where Frank is. I wonder if he's
got to be up north. He's talking about pike and walleye too.
Yeah.
So you fished up north a lot, and I've always wondered this. I know this is probably off topic of what we're talking about tonight, but what does that mean? Bass season closes. That means you can't possess them, or can't target them.
Well, of course, I'm never there in the winter. Okay.
Right.
But when I was going up there to work, bass season typically opened on the second Saturday of May, basically. I think it's the weekend before Mother's Day, maybe, or the weekend of Mother's Day. I can't remember. But usually the second Saturday, it would open. And then you could fish, you know, whatever the lake regulations were. And then when it iced up, I believe, and now don't quote me on this because I'm not an ice fisherman, but I think you could still target them through the year until the ice thawed out. So, but when it thawed out, there was like there was a time frame where you couldn't target them, and then you could fish for panfish. And then if you accidentally caught a fish where the season was closed, like a bass, and you just had to immediately release it. So I have bass fished with a beetle spin before.
Really?
Yeah, it's everyone does it up there, but how that season plays between ice and ice out, and then the beginning of the season legally, technically, I'm probably not sure of that because I was never there, you know, during that time frame. But you could target them in Minnesota. You could target them from the opener until at least through the end of the year. I know some guys targeted them through the ice. It's but then how that ends, how that shifts, I'm not sure.
Now, I've always that's a question, I guess. What's the allure of targeting a smallmouth through the ice? Because I always imagine targeting fish through the ice is meant for the frying pan.
Oh, it is for perch and if they're allowed to keep walleye, it is, or bluegill. Bluegill are excellent through the ice. The thing that ice fishing, what little I've done it, and what little I know about it, the thing that is how shallow they can catch some of those fish after the lake is iced over. You'd be really surprised at how shallow some of those fish are. And weed oriented oftentimes. You don't have to be in 40 feet of water in the middle of winter to catch them. So that's it's kind of a good lesson in where fish will be where they want to be.
Yeah, I think I got a buddy here locally that every time that it freezes pretty hard here, he goes out to his uncle's little pond, and he'd check the ice obviously, but walk out to the shallow side of things, and he's posted multiple pictures of 10 to 15 bluegill, good sized bluegill. And I always ask him, like, that I know that pond's not that deep, but it has some deep areas, 12 to probably 15, 16 foot deep. And he's like, no, I just catch them up on a shallow flat where I catch them, in the late spring spawning. So I said, okay. Makes sense.
Yeah. As far as the fish are concerned, it's just a cloudy day.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So
cloudy day, and there's not a hatch going on, so I'm not going very far to eat.
Didn't see RD on the Egypt leader, but I was on my couch, buddy. I was on the ultimate leaderboard. I was on my couch.
Smart man.
Staying warm.
Yeah. But they caught him though. It took 15 pounds to win, and it took 11 to cut a check. Monty Bolin won. I think Niswanger got third or something like that. Swalls was in there. Just the usual crew. Clark and Jelly, I think, were in the top four. So yeah, they bit. I talked to Rodney. They caught. They had a limit. It sounded like the deep fish. Everyone caught fish, but the shallow fish outweighed the deep fish. It sounded like to me. But everybody caught them.
Yeah, I was wondering about that because the couple times I've been over there, most of the fish that I caught, I didn't catch a ton of fish, but of the sample that I had, they were smaller fish with a couple keepers mixed in there, a couple overs mixed in there, but
yep. Yeah, it's been my experience too on the deeper fish. But man, you can catch a bunch of them if you hit them right. They're really well. That day you and I were out there, that was a big school of fish.
It was
aggressive, but I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of them in these schools. I mean, literally. And I was thinking of, when you asked me to be on the live stream and talk about winter fishing, one thing I wanted to mention for any high school kid who might be listening or high school coach, those kids, and they're all savvy at electronics and their phone and, using I would assume using a depth finder would be easier for them to learn than it was for me. This is the time of year those kids need to be out there right now, because you get a lot of feedback on your electronics right now. And I went to a few of the high school weigh-ins this fall, and they weren't catching them, and they were just bank beaten. And if they were to have been using their electronics, I mean, really, there's no excuse to not have a limit because they can catch 12-inch fish. There's really not an excuse not to have a limit of 5 12-inchers, really in no time. And that would be the one teaching moment that I think winter can provide these kids, is because everyone's got side scan now. I mean, not everyone has forward-facing sonar, but you don't have to have it. I would urge any kid to get out and winter fish, if they're wanting to learn, because you're going to get feedback this time of year. You may not be big fish, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think
Very good, solid point.
you talk about side scan though, this time of the year and through the cold weather season, if you want to go look for things on your local lake, you want to. This is the time to get out there and do it while the water's still soft and you can still move around. Your electronics will be at their best for the next 3 months.
Yep. Down scan, side scan, you'll be able to see the lakes are clear right now. The water's cold. You're gonna get a good picture, and right now is the time to get out there and learn it because it's gonna apply. I mean, it applies all the time, but I mean, it's really going to apply other than the spawn. I mean, those fish are always out there.
Yeah, and if you're really motivated, you can drop your boat in the morning when it's still really cold and just idle around for an hour or so and look at stuff, mark brush piles, rock piles, just kind of see where the bait is, do all that. And then once it warms up just a little bit, then you can start fishing. But I mean, and like you said, this is on those cold days where maybe it's miserably cold, but you have the day off or you have some free time. Just go idle around for several hours and you'd be amazed. You don't have the algae, the plankton in the water.
Yep.
You know, there's some, you'll still see it in the evenings. It still kind of happens, but the water is so clear right now. Your images on your side scan, your down scan are just second to none. And it's the best time to go out there and look around. You don't have the boat traffic. You don't have to, there's not a lot of rocking going on. So your image is going to be a lot clearer. And it's just, it's the time to go check stuff out. Some of these places, like right now, the lakes are really low.
Yep.
Even without electronics, it's a great time while the lake's low to go see all the crazy stuff that's out there in these lakes.
And there's some really cool stuff that's visible to the naked eye now in the backs of some of these creeks because the water's so clear. Water's down probably, I don't know, a foot and a half, looks like on the spillway. I mean, you can see a lot of stuff that you normally wouldn't see, irregardless of electronics, just being able to see. So it's a really important, I think it's really important time to be on the water. I really do. Let alone you can catch a bunch of fish right now.
I saw something. I was on Cedar the other day, and Cedar's down a lot. It keeps falling. I guess they're just drawing water out of it.
Well, I think doesn't Carbondale use that as a backup water supply or water supply?
Yeah. What's funny about Cedar to me is it's actually now at the original bank line. It's right now, and when you see the rungs on the dock at the Carbondale end, when you see those rungs that are off on the side of the dock exposed, now you're getting close to the original bank line. And if you look at there's an old line of riprap that's now exposed there at the boat ramp at Carbondale and some other places. That used to be full until they worked on the dam several years ago. And so it's actually down to the level where how I originally learned the lake. But that's ancient history. So yeah, as far as the fish are concerned right now, the lake is low. But that's a little bit of tidbit there.
I saw a little rock pile. There's a little short pocket, and probably 20 feet from the bank, there was this little rock pile. It was small natural like shell type rock it was a little hump there, and I could just see the top of it. And I never knew that was there. I caught fish in the area, but it was something that the grass had been over, and it was exposed. It was really cool. I was just looking at it. I'm like, that's neat. That's the kind of stuff that you see. It's not just it's not like hardcover all the time, like stumps and things and laydowns. You actually see little rock piles and rock changes, and it's pretty neat. And you can see how the water, like you'll see a little ditch, like coming into Cedar. All that in the back of the creek is flat. You can see that little ditch that runs down there. It's not that wide. It's like probably 4 feet wide, but you can see where that little ditch runs down through that flat, and you can't really tell when there's water in it, even though there's only 2 foot of water. but it's pretty interesting.
Well, you can see that there's a 6-8 inch depth change right there, and that depth change has been there for years and years and years, and probably back years and years and years and years ago. You could there was probably a creek channel that actually ran through there that's now silted in. Yeah, because I know back in Clay, all the way back in the creek, I haven't been over there in a couple of weeks, but you could barely get back into some of those areas without having to pick up the trolling motor or push your way in. But I remember growing up as a kid, there was no problem getting back in there, even when the water was low, and it's just silted in so much over the years back there.
Yeah, that's changed a lot back there. That when you go back there where the two creeks come in and they got that big hump of dirt on the right now.
Yep.
That used to never be there. That used to be, I've caught fish where that 4 foot high mound of dirt is. It's amazing how that's silted in. But once you get into the creeks themselves are the same. You can, especially that one that bends back to the right that runs south, you can go back in that. You know, it eventually turns into the actual creek bottom, and
right.
That's maintained itself. But yeah, that's all.
Do you think the Illinois will ever do anything to remove some of that silt out of those creeks, or are they just going to let it go how it is?
I don't think on Cedar, unless it ever got into a situation where it interfered with the water supply, which it went where the pump house is, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So I doubt it. Now they are doing some dredging at Rend right now.
Are they really?
Yeah, they actually moved the last Angler's Choice. They actually moved the boat ramp where they were taking off out of because they were doing some dredge work. So of course now that's Army Corps. So right. I don't, that doesn't surprise me. They're a little bit more on top of that, but there is some dredge work that's going on right now at Rend. It would be hard for me to see that happen at Cedar. I tell you where it needs to, a Little Lake local, where it would be helpful is Little Grassy back there in Giant City. That old ramp back there is basically unusable now. That used to be a good little boat ramp and dock there, but you can't. The way it's silted in, the dock's all trashed. I don't remember the last time I put in back there, but I used to put in back there quite a bit. They
did that work on Kincaid last year. They dredged out that,
did.
Which is a good thing because that was getting pretty.
Where did they dredge out?
Right there, just going out of it. They dredged out right where the boat ramp is.
Jonathan?
Mm-hmm.
Or Johnson?
Yeah, at the no wake ramp.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a couple feet deeper now.
Okay.
Down through there.
That's good.
You still got to travel the same trail that you used to.
Well, I mean,
but it is deeper.
I'm assuming during COVID they dredged that out pretty good because all the traffic that was using that ramp during COVID.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was for
the main ramp was closed.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of people got hung up on that.
Oh, I guarantee you that.
It doesn't run like it looks.
You shouldn't. The way you go is not the way you think you should go.
Right. It's like Wapapello up in the river. It's deceiving.
Yeah.
Here's a question for us. Any advice for a shallow stained mud bottom lake in Ohio this time of year? October was great, but not much luck since. Anybody?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to say, never being on a lake, but on stained water when it gets cold, you've got to give them you got to give the fish a chance to find the bait. That big bladed spinnerbait of yours, Gabe, where you can move it slowly but keep the bait off the bottom. That's the first thing that comes to mind. That big giant spinnerbait of yours with that big Colorado blade.
Right.
Well, some of those fish you caught were like in 37, 38 degree water with that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that gets
in dirty water.
In dirty water.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. I think, and you and I discussed this, I believe, last week. Stained water is is not a universal term. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it could be
stained
really
water
clear.
to you and I could be, a foot visibility, and other folks stained water could be 3 or 4 foot visibility. So
Right.
I go more on what the visibility actually is, and kind of like you said a while ago when I asked you about the jerkbait and stained water, how dirty is too dirty? It's all relative. Is that lake stained 365 days out of the year where they're used to it? So that's not really a stain at that point. That's just normal water conditions. I'm thinking if it's a mud bottom lake, you got to stay off of the bottom for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not dragging a jig around, depending on the bottom composition. Again, kind of like you said, Ron, you have to go there to know, but unless there's some hard spots, if there's some hard spots, I definitely target those. Again, great time of the year to use your electronics and find those hard spots.
I'll tell you another bait that doesn't get used enough anymore in cold water, but that we used to, is a soft plastic jerkbait. We talk a lot about jerkbait, but a soft plastic jerkbait, and I don't know what the cover is at this particular lake, but if it's not, well, even if it's really muddy, you can adjust colors, but a soft plastic jerkbait can be dynamite in cold water, especially during a shad kill.
The thing that jumped out to me about that question was the mud bottom. Mm-hmm. And like Jonathan touched on, mud bottom says to me, stay off of the bottom for the most part. So if I'm going to that lake, I'm going to be looking for any kind of hard cover, like a laydown or wood, and I'm going to be fishing. I'm thinking those fish are probably going to be suspended, until it gets really, really cold, and then they will probably hunker down in the mud. Sometimes they'll get their bellies in the mud and stuff. But I've seen fish suspended in those muddy lakes so much, it's frustrating. I didn't realize that was going on until I got side scan, and then even most recently with the forward facing sonar. But I always assume that they're going to be tucked up really tight to cover, and a lot of times they are. But there's a lot of fish that are just out there suspended, even in that dirty water. Like when we were fishing Truman this year in the BFLs, a lot of fish are just out there suspended, and that the visibility is probably 2 foot. So you're thinking that they're going to be shallow, and then they're going to be right up against stuff, but that's not always the case. Sometimes they're out in the middle of the pockets, just suspended for whatever reason. But not having been to the lake, I would, the obvious answer to me is throw something that falls slow. I'm thinking like an 1/8 ounce shaky head, a June bug color, a darker color, even a green pumpkin with maybe a chartreuse tip on the tail. Something that falls pretty slow down through that hard cover and give those fish a chance to find it. Or a crankbait, something that stays up off the bottom, a square reel of some sort. Yeah, something that just kind of gets their attention. And but that'd be my recommendation. It's hard to tell exactly without being there how it lays out. How deep is it? Is there a lot of coves? Is there riprap? You always want to gravitate towards hardcover any time of the year, but especially if you've got really, really hardcore stain and colder water. I think they get around that hardcover. So if there's riprap, definitely check out the riprap and laydowns.
Yep, I agree.
Patrick says he fished the back of Long Creek off Table Rock this past Saturday, where he had to pull up his trolling motor on his jack and paddle through a section. That's pretty low. Yeah, Mike was down there. He said it was 7 foot low, and I think we had Matt on here last week, and Matt was saying that it was still 7 foot low down at Table Rock.
Is that typical for this time of year with the pulling it down?
Not usually. I think it's a lot lower than normal. I think it's suffered from the drought, just like all the other lakes in the area.
Okay.
Jay, I was just thinking about Newton today, actually. So I'm up for that, man.
Have you ever been there?
No. I think me and Ron have talked about it too, going up there sometime.
I'd like to go up. I've been checking out like camping spots up there. That it looks like they got a couple of nice campgrounds up there, and I thought it'd be cool to do like a weekend trip because it's 3 hours from the house.
It's like 3.5.
Yeah. It would be it wouldn't be a over or a day trip for me.
Right.
I'd go up there.
Is this the guy who asked about the Ohio Lake?
Yeah, less than a foot of visibility.
Okay.
So that's definitely
That's stained.
that's super stained.
That's stained. So that's spinnerbait or a chatterbait. You would think,
but if you, again, forward facing sonar, I mean, a foot of visibility is not much, but if it's like that all year, a red colored jerkbait, our chartreuse,
trap, lipless,
a trap, yeah. I mean, something that you could, if you could target individual fish, I mean, you'll be in the hunt at least. So
here's a question from Dennis. How do you recommend protecting your boat and motor for the drive home and storing outside after fishing and then having freezing temps? That's a great question.
The first thing that comes to my mind is making sure you drain that motor at the boat ramp. You should be draining it anyway for invasive species. Make sure you tilt that motor all the way down, let it drain. That's number one, get the water out of the motor. That's probably the most important thing. And then obviously be able to put a cover on it or something at home if it's going to sit outside.
Do you pull your plug at freezing temperatures?
I always pull my plug on my boat. Well, I just got the dial thing.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Make sure your live wells are on empty.
Yep.
And then your plug is out, so all that stuff drains. And you can even, if you get off the lake and you're not going to be in the way on the boat ramp, sit on that incline or that decline. And that way it gets everything towards the back of the boat. If there's any water that seeped through the course of the day, it'll drain out on the way home.
Yeah. And obviously put treatment in your gas. But
that's really all you can do. I mean,
save for a garage. Save your money for a garage. That's about other than that, but
it's it's amazing. You say that it's crazy. It's amazing what Mother Nature can do to a boat in no time.
Oh my God!
Even just our John boats. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's gonna get it.
David says Newton is overrated right now. Cedar and Kincaid are just as good.
I think it's the allure of
20 years.
I think it's the allure of a new lake for me, though. Like going up and learning something completely new, not having to worry about getting run over by big boats because it's got a 25 horsepower limit on, I believe. So it's a lake that's about the same size as Egypt and Kincaid. So
it's got two arms. It's got the hot water arm and then a
cold water arm. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, Russ says Table Rock is 910 right now, and for this time of year, it's supposed to be 917. December it changes to 915. Yeah, so even normal winter pool is 915, and it's 5 feet below that right now.
So they're not going to have to pull water this winter.
No, it's already there. They're just going to let it fill up. It's just so strange. I think Bull Shoals is actually maybe low.
Well, that's the first time in a long time.
Yeah, it's a lot of times it's 30 feet high.
Right.
It just shows you the kind of summer that we've had. How there's been such a shortage of water and rainfall this time of year.
Did you play with the shad at all when you were at Cedar the other day?
Yes, I had a pretty good day on an underspin in a certain area. After I got away from that grass, I kind of looked around. But a lot of it was just covering some water with the chatterbait and spinnerbait too. But towards the end of the day, I did kind of do some scanning and find some bait out a little deeper.
How far
is there still a lot of shad in the grass?
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah, there was plenty in the grass.
Yep.
That's why I thought
that changes.
Yeah, I know.
With this crazy abrupt change in the weather.
What were the water temps at Egypt today?
58 up front. 58. I didn't go past Snoski Island. So I had 58. Now my graph usually runs, when I compare it to other guys' graphs, usually a degree or two warmer. So on someone else's graph, they might have been reading 56, 55. I had 57, 58. I remember last year on Cedar, remember we had 2 years ago, we had the huge shad kill at Cedar. I think it was 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And then the following year was like, where's all the bait? Where's all the bait? Where's all the bait? Well, then it finally got cold and the bait came out of the grass. I was like, oh, there's the bait. And then all of a sudden there was plenty of bait. So it's amazing how much bait, and Cedar's got, for anyone listening that doesn't know anything about Cedar, Cedar's got good grass basically all the way around it. So it can hold a lot of bait. But when it all came out of the bait, man, the creek arms really filled up with shad.
We have crickets. I bought some crickets from the bait shop up the street for my little gecko. My daughters have a gecko. And
did one of them get out?
No, it got sick, and we took it to the vet. You know,
the gecko or the cricket?
The gecko. We took.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just realized that there's he's got a cricket cage. I thought there was a cricket in the house.
No, there's about 40 crickets in that little cage. That's what you're hearing.
Okay, I was looking at like the tree and the wall and wondering.
They're downstairs because I had them upstairs, and my wife says you're gonna have to take those crickets downstairs. They're keeping me up at night, so they're down here in the basement.
I'm sorry, distraction.
Yeah, there they go.
Oh, that's fine.
But it's fun because see, we fed the gecko like mealworms forever in a little bowl, and it's boring. The mealworms move around. He goes over there and he eats them. But these crickets, it's hilarious. It's a show because he's not a good hunter. I don't know if he'd survive in the wild. He misses. He's like 1 for 10 on his lunges. It's hilarious.
So it's interesting to watch.
It's hilarious. He'll bump his nose up against a rock or against the side of the aquarium. But I think he likes them. I think he likes to hunt. You know, he gets all excited and he kind of stalks around the cage.
It's like us first learning how to use live scope.
Yeah, he's enjoying it. So it's good to see him. I feel sorry for him. He's in a 10-gallon tank, and I don't know.
Just let him go in the basement, bud.
Hey, I've got a hack that might help people with live scope or active target or whatever brand they're using. This is going to sound hilarious. I think Gabe saw it, or I said something to him, but I've got a Lowrance trolling motor on my big boat, and the arrow indicator sucks. You know, as far as telling you which way the trolling motor is pointed. You know, if you have a Ultrax, you know, the spins and you know which way it's pointed just because the head's pointed whichever way. Well, the Lowrance motor is fixed, and I think the Garmin one is too, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure, but anyway, so I'm like, well, this forward-facing sonar, what's a hell of a nice picture, but I have no idea where it's pointing, so it's not doing me any good. So I've got the active target, and on the active target transducer, there's a place to put the knob on both sides of the transducer, depending on how you mount it. So I was like, well, what can I put on there? So I took a coat hanger, a white coat hanger, and I cut the long straight part of it off. And anyway, I took a knob because the knobs for the my Lowrance units and for the transducer are the same. They take the same knob. So I took that coat hanger and wrapped it around the knob and screwed it into the transducer. And I now have a pointer that sticks out from my transducer perfectly from where, pointing exactly where that transducer is pointed. And I can look at my screen, my active target. I can see the arrow in front of me all in the same line of sight. And it's like the light bulb went off. And it's, I'm embarrassed to say how much money I have wrapped up in my fishing equipment. And maybe the most important part right now is a coat hanger.
So is that coat hanger under the water?
Yeah, just barely under the water.
Okay.
Where I have my transducer set where it's not very far under the water.
You might be onto something.
I'm telling you, someone needs to mass produce this thing because if you think about it, if you put that transducer on irregardless of your brand, if you put it on that shaft of your trolling motor, I'll say it's 2 degrees off. And the active target transducer is an 18-degree cone. When you take 2 degrees off and extrapolate to 80 or 100 feet, you're not pointing at what you think you're pointing at.
Right.
No.
So that pointer being attached to the transducer, it's pointing right towards whatever that transducer is actually looking at, irregardless of any human error on the way it's attached to the trolling motor.
Right.
And it has made a huge difference in my fishing.
I bumped mine the other day, and I knew I could tell it was off. Like,
yeah,
it may have been perfectly straight, but it was off from where it was at before. Where after a year,
where you were used to it,
I knew where to cast at, and I could not hit that window for nothing. And finally, I got it. I pulled it up. I'm like, I just tilted it the way I thought I needed to go, put it back down, and I was fine again. But it was just minute. Like you said, it could have been 2 degrees off, but it was off enough where it was frustrating when I'd point the trolling motor down my line that was on the water. I could not see my bait.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Lowrance, somebody posted something today. And any speculation?
I do have some intel on that. Lowrance is going to drop their new unit. Well, supposedly. I'll preface this with saying supposedly, because
rumor has it.
I can't say what I've heard is official.
I mean, PowerPole's been dropping a trolling motor for 3 years, so.
Yeah, and that's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing it's a new version of the live unit. It's their next generation. They are going to, it's not going to be anything earth-shattering, but it's probably the next necessary step. They're going to have a new transducer for the live unit, a new processor in the live unit. So you're going to get basically just a better picture. And they're going to improve the active target to kind of match the Gen 2 of the live scope. And then on the screens, they're going to discontinue the 7-inch live and replace that with a 10-inch option. Because right now there's no 10-inch option on the live units. So you'd have a 9, a 10, a 12, and a 16, getting rid of the 7-inch option.
That's
on the
one
live.
of the best
And the new
decisions they could have done.
The new active target transducer will be compatible with your existing box, so you don't have to buy the new box. This is what I've been told, and we'll see if that's true. It looks like it's going to drop December 1st, whatever it is.
So I imagine there's probably going to be another iteration of it. If we go back and we look at and this is again speculation, we go back and look at Gen 1, Gen 2, HD Touch.
The HDS, and then there was a Gen 3.
Touch was Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4.
Well, there was a non-touch and a touch in Gen 2, because I have them both.
Okay.
There was a Gen 3 was touch. Then there was the carbon. And the Gen 2 touch is when they got rid of their box. So I would imagine there's going to be another iteration of getting rid of an extra accessory at some point down the line.
I tell you what I'd like them to do is I want them to internalize 0.1 antenna.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
I hate that 0.1 antenna setup. You got to have a powered cable, and I mean, just put that dang thing in the system and be done with it.
Do you have anything else on your NEMA?
Well, my NEMA connects my motor to my graph.
Okay.
0.1 trolling motors on the NEMA. It's all connected.
So you have a reason to have a powered backbone for the NEMA system then, besides just 0.1.
Yeah.
See, ours is, I think both of ours is just the 0.1.
Okay.
The NEMA backbone is just for
that's all I've got. I've just got it on its separate switch to power, and that's it. It's a 0.1 antenna, but you got to have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 0.1 was one of the best investments that I ever made. Pre forward facing sonar.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. That saves you a lot of time, for sure.
Well, we're talking about forward-facing sonar, and something I wrote down was, what do you think the effect of forward-facing sonar, or what effect has forward-facing sonar had on our fisheries, fish population? It's something that's been a constant buzz ever since it's came out, and I've seen it on. I had a couple comments on my channel, and I've seen it on some other people's channels. So what are your thoughts on forward-facing sonar and how it would affect the fish population?
I think it's expedited how smart the fish have gotten. I think that if you just look at the big picture, more lures are being thrown directly at fish than what they were before. Just nationwide, mathematically, more lures are thrown directly at fish than before because people see a fish and they throw at it. I mean, it's that simple. What I don't think, I'm not a person that thinks it's hurting our fish populations. I think the fish are in the lake. I do think it changes how they behave. I think they're more sonar wary than they have been before. I think they're more. If you throw the wrong thing at them, they react negatively faster. And then other times they're just in a really good mood and they swim right under your dang boat and it doesn't matter. And that's the truth, people. They swim under your boat and they hang out there. They like to get under your boat more than I ever realized. By the hundreds sometimes, and it's maddening. But so I don't think. I mean, it's a bass and other fish that we chase with forward-facing sonar are a renewable resource, so I'm not really worried about that. It just creates different challenges to the fishermen on how to properly use it and how to properly not use it. Look at guys like John Cox and the other shallow water pros that are making a living by not using it. And their fishing's probably getting better because everyone else is out there looking at the fish. Bradley Hallman, who just qualified for the elites, says he caught his last limit on the final day that got him in the elites by going to fish that he knew other people weren't bothering because everyone was live scoping. And these fish were up really shallow and he caught them because they weren't being bothered because no one was live scoping them. So there was an opportunity created. So guys are just going to have to be creative just like they've always been. Here's the other thing I'm noticing. I mean, you see a fish, you throw at it, you see your lure go by it. Sometimes they eat it, but most of the times they don't. I have found a lot, especially starting with this. Well, we were in early fall last week, and now we're in late winter a week later with this weather change. But I have found I'm catching a lot of fish by throwing to the sides of the fish. You see the group, like this winter stuff we're talking about, you see a school of fish, not necessarily one individual fish. And I will throw to the side of the school, one side or the other. I don't try and target right at them sometimes. And sometimes I think I catch some fish because that lure is not landing right on their head all the time. It could be I'm landing on other fish that I'm just not seeing too, but I think guys are going to just have to continually be creative about when to use it and when not to use it, and being good at it when you need to be good at it. But as far as fish populations go, not so much. Now, I have heard talk on crappie fishing about some conservation folks being worried about it changing the size structure of something like guys crappie fish. Usually they take them home. There's some talk about the worrying about changing the size structure of the lake. If everyone can target a 13 or 14-inch crappie and everybody catches those and everybody takes them home, then that would require different management in that particular case. But in general, I don't think we're gonna chase the fish out of the lake just because everyone's got forward-facing sonar. We're just, fish are gonna adapt, and the fishermen are gonna have to keep adapting, I think.
Yeah.
What do y'all think?
I think the biggest concern would be with the crappie for the reason that you mentioned. Most bass fishermen are catch and release, so all it's going to do to the bass population is just make the bass harder to catch as they get educated. I mean, there's going to be some mortality just from people catching the fish and handling them, maybe some delayed mortality, but nothing compared to actually taking the fish out of the lake and eating it. But there's most lakes have a lot more panfish in them than what we realize. So as far as the numbers, I don't think it's going to hurt the actual numbers for the most part, but I do think there's a possibility that it could hurt the size, like the quality of the fish, because you can, I haven't done this, but it's not uncommon for people to just pester a crappie, a better than average crappie. Say somebody locates a crappie that's looks to be, 2.5 pounds or better. And it's not uncommon for them to just follow it around for a long time, 10, 15, until they catch it. Now, what they do with it after that is up to them. If they're just after it for the sport and they release it and they want to take some pictures, well, then that's not hurting it. But if they're just targeting, say there's a 25 fish limit on a certain, body of water, and they're just targeting 2.5 to 3 pound crappie and they're putting them all in their cooler. Well, you get a couple of guys that are really good at that. And say it's a smaller lake, say it's less than 1,000 acres.
Make it,
and they're doing it. And they're doing it a lot. They're just obsessed. They're meat collectors, and they're giving crappie fillets to their grandma, to their neighbors, to their kids and stuff. Say they got 50 in their freezer, and then they're supplying, their whole church with crappie fillets. You get a couple people doing that, and they can put a hampering on, a small lake in a short amount of time. But I would say, hopefully people will respect the resources and be stewards of the water and the land. I think that's really the key. The technology is out there. It's not going anywhere. We're not going to take it back. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. So we're just going to have to be wise with our resources. There's nothing wrong with keeping fish, but just take what you need and put back what you don't.
I think Ron alluded to it earlier. He's talking about the evolution of fish and how movement has changed and patterns will change, and kind of like Bradley Hallman last day to qualify for the Elite Series. We're going to see a pattern shift of fish, I believe, over the next. I think we've already started to see it. I don't think it's going to happen 5 years. It's happening currently.
I agree.
Because it didn't take long. But what you're saying about the crappie, it's just like hunting for big deer. Now you're taking a genetic out of that lake, right? If it's a small lake and there's 7 3+ pound crappie in that lake that spawn every single year, that genetic of that 3 pound crappie, if you take multiple of those out of there, is not going to be there. But Mother Nature will always right itself. However long it will take, it will right itself.
Yeah.
Fish will change their habits. They will change their patterns. I mean, every lake goes through cycles. We talked about that. We can talk about that until we're blue in the face, but sometimes the cycle is caused by humans. And I think this is one of those cycles that we will see for a while. And that it'll be just another tool in our bag. It's not for those folks that are out there, and we talked about this before we went on, live scope is not an end all be all, go out and catch fish. I got down the rabbit hole on Randy Block's post about people bashing live scope. And I'm not saying that everybody that's bashing live scopes ever used live scope, but let me tell you, they don't just jump in the boat because you put $3,000 worth of electronics on the front of your boat.
That was another question I had while we're touching on that. Do you think these people that bad mouthing or have a negative view of forward facing sonar, what percentage of those people do you think have it on their boat and have utilized it?
Well,
What
I would
be
say if
your
they're
guess?
bashing it, they're not having it on their boat.
I would agree with John. I would agree that probably most of them either don't have it or have used it very little. I would think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean that was my guess too. 100%.
I know a guy at Cedar personally that if there was 30 of him, the population of crappie would decimate overnight.
Because he's keeping everything.
No, because he's got a John boat with a scull and paddle, and he knows how to target fish. He doesn't have an electronic one on his boat. He's got an outboard and a scull and paddle, and he knows where those fish are at. And he'll come home with. He never catches over his limit. I see him every Saturday and Sunday. He's over there all the time, and he catches the hell out of them. And when I say he catches the hell out of them, he catches the hell out of them. But he's taking home and he's eating his crappie every week.
Nothing wrong with that.
There's not a thing wrong with it, but that just shows that to go over there and catch 13 to 14-inch crappie when everybody else is catching 7 to 9-inch crappie, and he doesn't have an electronic one on his boat. I'm not against or for forward-facing sonar. I don't care. I think it's a tool that helps me learn more about the fish, not necessarily catch more fish and put more fish in the boat. I want to know how they react when I throw that jig at them. So,
I really think the key for guys like the three of us and, guys that fish local tournaments and stuff, and I guess we call ourselves like semi-serious, or I don't know how you categorize guys like us, but I think the key for forward-facing sonar is, number one, learn how to use it and be good at it when you need it. But more importantly, know when not to use it. I really think I have heard more people at weigh-ins the last couple of years say who didn't do any good in the tournament, myself included, and we got live scope. Not meaning we got beat by someone using live scope. We got beat by staring at live scope all day and not turning it off when the fish were telling us the whole time, hey, we're not biting, but you see it, so it gets personal, and you keep going down the wrong rabbit hole instead of trying to find something else that works. Because more fish don't bite than bite by a large margin.
Yeah,
and it's not going to go back the other way. It's
for me with live scope. We've had my team partner and I had this conversation. I'm not confident enough in live scope to do it in a tournament yet. Like, to go 100% all in live scope in a tournament. I may use it to catch a few fish, but I'm not going to go out for 5 hours and solely target live scope fish.
Well, okay. So in our area, I think there is the grass equation that we can't forget about. If you get if you're on a lake like Lake of the Ozarks or Table Rock, when you don't have a population that lives in the grass and a population that lives offshore.
And I think there's probably a greater population that lives in that grass than that lives offshore.
So for you to just, you've got to be on a really, really good live scope offshore bite just to target, just strictly use live scope other than just fishing brush piles. Now, I mean, I could see fishing a brush pile tournament on some of these local lakes with your live scope, but that's not actually, target. You're not
going after an individual fish. You're going after the brush pile.
Right. Which is how we all use it a lot. But back to what you were just talking about, Ron, I think the key is with any technology, like you said, is learning when to use it and when not to use it. And that's something that, the more we go out with the technology, the more we learn when to leave it alone. When we first get it I'm still a little bit like this, but I remember the first couple months, I didn't care if I caught a fish or not. I was going to go out around. You're mesmerized. It's an amazing deal, but you can tell, if the fish are reacting right. Like if you idle around, you find some bait fish and you find some bass relating to those bait fish. You put your trolling motor down. You do your little live scope thing and look around and you make some casts. You can kind of tell. I'm getting to where I've been doing it enough. I'm definitely no #pro, but I've done it enough to where I kind of got a feeling if it's going to happen or not. And I won't mess with them. I mean, I'll make a few casts unless I just really want to play around, you know, if I've got some time to waste and I'm like, let's just go through some different, you know, baits and see if they'll respond. But typically the times that I've done good using live scope, it's happened pretty quick. You're going to get a feel pretty quick whether that group of fish is going to respond. And the more you do it, the more you realize, hey, it's not happening. I need to move on. I mean, I'll spend like 10 minutes. If I pull up on a point and I see probably maybe there's 5 little sections of shad, you know, little bait balls out there, and there's a couple fish in each bait ball. And I make a couple casts on each one and I spend 10, 15 minutes and I don't get any response, I'm gone. I'm moving out unless I just want to keep experimenting. But I don't expect to get bit by those fish.
Well, I think the experiment, not to cut you off, but that experimentation for me is when that fish reacts on that first bite. May not bite, but he reacts. He does something.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't do anything, he just stands there stagnant, I'm out. Like, I know that fish isn't going to, I can throw 5 other things at it and he's probably going to maybe react to one, but is it a waste of my time at that point?
Yeah, right.
So,
it depends on how much free time you have.
Yeah.
And another thing that I've learned, this is huge. The more fish that are in a tighter school, like a little wolf pack, if you find a wolf pack of like 5 to 10 fish, you got a pretty good chance of catching one of those, or at least them showing some interest. But if you find like a single or a double, good luck, man. I mean, I've done it a couple times, but most of the time you're wasting your time. So that's another thing that when you drop that trolling motor down and you start panning around, if you don't see a wolf pack, you may be better off to keep searching and looking for groups of fish versus the singles. Because there's singles like just about everywhere. You can put your trolling motor down just about anywhere on the lake and you'll see one fish,
it's amazing.
It's that little group, that little wolf pack that's moving through the area and they're actively feeding. They're corralling those shad.
And it's competition.
And it's competition. They're more likely to go for your bait. And another thing I've learned is a lot of times your first or second cast, like if that fish moves and shows interest and doesn't commit, you may not get another chance. It seems like I don't know how to explain it, but there's been several times where you got a group of fish and one of them kind of swims over where your bait's dropping. They follow it, it kind of blends and they don't bite it and they back off and they go back into the school.
They get too good a look.
Yeah, you got to get too good of a look at it. And then that next cast, he may show some interest, but it's highly unlikely that you're going to catch that fish if he doesn't commit to it after the first or second look. Now, if he gets a couple buddies coming over there and looking at it,
he's good.
Then it'll happen. But you only get a couple chances, and that's the thing that you learn as you do this more is what to stay after and what to punt on and move and try to find more aggressive fish.
Yep.
Russ is.
Hold on. I saw, this is the great thing about having a live feed here with Ron, and we mentioned brush piles a while ago, and Ron went, he disagreed with us on something. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
I think he was agreeing with us.
Were you agreeing, or did you have a disagreement?
No, I disagreed with something you said about individual fish and profiles.
I want to hear it.
Oh, I thought you had a question you were going to pop up.
I want to hear it. I want to hear this.
I know for a fact that there's been a lot of money won. Some of the tournaments, and this is A-rig related, kind of marrying the A-rig and brush pile thing. And Gabe's probably seen this and you too, as you're traveling for the BFLs, because you guys can throw the A-rig, I think. But I know there's been a lot of money won with A-rigs over the top of brush piles targeting individual fish, bigger fish. Okay. And there's a father-son duo here in Egypt, the Hueys, and they're probably, at least on Egypt, they're probably the best live scopers on Egypt, and they have the ability to target individual fish over brush, with not just an A-rig, but the A-rig helps, and catching those fish. That happens all over the country, targeting fish out of those brush piles. But you can, I mean, you guys know, you see a good one, you know it's a good one on there. As you get better at reading that, you can tell what a big fish is. Specifically on wood cover, weeds that gets a little muddled. Sometimes you'll see a movement in the weeds on forward-facing sonar, then the fish is gone, then it reappears. Like if you're working a weed line. But in brush, you can see that fish pretty clearly, and it can be targeted for guys who know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's kind of like it depends on what you're looking for. You can sit there and mess with the fish like that. I know some of the guys that do really good with it, Lake of the Ozarks that we've had on these live streams. They won't cast at all. They'll put the trolling motor down and they'll cruise around and they'll look. I mean, it may be 30 minutes between casts, and they're fishing a jerkbait or an A-rig. Most of the time, it's a jerkbait. It's a team tournament down there, big tournament, and they'll cruise around and they won't throw it a 2-pounder. They won't throw it a 3-pounder. They'll wait till they see the right size fish, and they're strictly targeting tournament quality bass using forward-facing sonar. They're committing to that technology for 8 hours. They don't, after 4 hours, if it's not working, they don't pick up a jig and go find a channel swing bank with rock. They don't do that. Yep. They're totally jerkbait for 8 hours forward-facing sonar, and that's kind of. Sometimes that's what you got to do. You got to completely commit to it. It's just like a fishing a frog. If it's frog things going on, you got to keep it in your hand for 8 hours, because there may only be a 30 or 45-minute window when it goes down. And if you're throwing a shaky head out on a point, you're going to miss that bite. But yeah, you can definitely target those single fish. I've caught some good ones, just singles like that. But I think the most bang for your buck, if you're wanting to go out and catch some fish using it, is trying to find those little schools or those little.
100%.
They're more likely to show some kind of response or interest in your bait.
Yeah, 100%. And that's not. I mean, that's true on any facet of your electronics. That's kind of getting back to what I was talking about. Those high school kids that are missing out on, who should be weighing a limit in every day, when you can catch 12 inchers. This is the time of year they need to go out, because you can see that. And you see the same thing on side scan or down scan, a little harder on 2D sonar, but you can find those groups of fish right now and see how they react. But yeah, that's 100% correct. The more fish, the better, and the tighter their group, the better luck you'll have most of the time.
I agree.
Good question.
Rush has got a good question here. He says, I'm getting ready to upgrade my Fortrex with an Ultrex. Probably one of the best decisions he'll make.
Agree.
With my Fortrex. No, I say that any trolling motor that's assisted. With my Fortrex, I can point my live scope at suspended bass and cast to them. With the Ultrex motor constantly moving, how do you stay on those fish? The Ultrex motor only moves when you put your foot on the
when you have on spot
unless
lock,
it's on spot lock.
Right.
If it's on spot lock, then you're kind of SOL on that one. You'll see it as it goes by. But for me, I use spot lock a heck of a lot less now if I'm targeting fish.
If you're using the
if I'm offshore, even if the wind's blowing 20 across the point, I use spot lock a heck of a lot less than I did before.
Because you're panning, you're using your foot to pan.
Yep. Right. It's going back to if you're just transferring. I wish I would have had our forward-facing sonar when I went to an Ultrex, because I wouldn't have relied on spot lock for the last 2-3 years as much as I did, because I kind of forgot how to use a trolling motor when the wind's blowing 20 and to stay in one spot, not be moving around in a 20-foot circle.
Well, Russ, this kind of comes back to pre-forward-facing sonar days, pre-electronics, and just getting down to the basics of fishing. You can relate the same scenario to pulling up on a point and making a couple casts, fan casting, and then you get a bite in one area. Well, once you get that fish off, you're going to make that same cast. And that's kind of how we use the forward-facing sonar when it is on spot lock. as it's panning, you're going to see nothing, and then you're going to see the fish, and then it's going to keep sweeping. Well, pay attention and locate the fish with the arrow, and that's your cast. So you don't have to actually be looking at the fish, but if you've been out there long enough, and I know you have, you know how to make a cast to an area where the fish are at and count your bait down and do all the things that you did before we had these electronics and stuff. Back to the instinct thing. So as it's sweeping, you're just kind of getting that little brief picture of where the fish are, and then you make your cast, count your bait down if you're fishing a swim bait or something, and it's so you don't actually have to be looking at the fish.
No,
it's just kind of you just get that little picture, and okay, yeah, they're over there, and you make that cast.
mm-hmm.
That's kind of.
Do you find yourself using Spotlock a lot now?
I still use it. I don't know. That's a tough question. When I'm searching, like you said, I'm usually I'm mobile and I'm panning around. But when I find an area, like the other day, if I find a group of fish that are relating to shad, and I know they're in that area, I'll spot lock so I can just focus on counting my bait down and my retreat.
Right.
You know, I don't have to actually see what I'm casting at once I've seen it through the sweep.
Right.
You know, but before that, yeah, I'm definitely just looking around, kind of going through the area and check things out.
I'll tell you what I did today is you idle in the wintertime looking for those groups of fish. Well, when I'd find a group of fish, I'm not adjusted to this cold weather yet, so I'm being a baby out there. So I'd idle into the wind. I'd find my fish. I'd go past the fish. I'd get up. I put it on spot lock. And the heck with forward-facing sonar, I go to the back of the boat with it on spot lock and fish with that wind to my back. That's a heck of a lot warmer than sitting there taking that wind face first. And I caught just all I needed to looking at my side scan on my back unit. And I was about 10 degrees warmer than had I'd been up there messing with my trolling motor.
And it's a heck of a lot easier to cast with the wind than it is against the wind.
Yeah, you're dang right. When you're fun fishing, I don't have to see them all.
This right here was worth the live stream. That little pointer right there. You don't read about that in Bassmaster.
No.
That's something from experience, being out in the water. And that's called common sense, man.
Yes.
I was 10 degrees, and in the afternoon we had an east wind today. That meant I was looking at the sun with the wind at my back. I was warm. If I'd have been fishing the other way around, I'd have been freezing.
You would have been in your shadow all day.
Yeah, forget that.
Waiting on spring.
Yeah, side scan works. I mean, and that's the other thing. We've been went off on this forward facing sonar thing, and it's got its merits, but don't forget about the other attributes of your electronics. I would get rid of my forward facing sonar before I got rid of down scan and side scan. I don't have.
What about your troll motor with spot lock?
Oh man, I don't know. I might take up golf. I've gotten kind of used to that.
I know that's what I'm saying. That's hard to once you go to a spot locked or a anchor mode or whatever your troll motor preference has. It's hard to go back.
I gotta have spot lock. It's pretty nice. It's everything lock. You know, you tie a knot lock, eat lunch lock, whatever. Net a
call fish, yeah. You know, as I was reading through the comments as we were talking about this, I think a lot of the folks on our stream tonight, it's take it or leave it. Don't have the money to put it on there yet. They want it, but they can't afford it. I don't see any hate out here on LiveScope. Here's Doug with Auto Trieve. You know, targeting it helps him target areas faster instead of hitting 20 casts to hit one stump. It's in 5 casts or a couple less casts. I think that's where I saw a huge advantage to it as well. Here's Tim Maynard, the observe the behaviors. We talked about that earlier. Eliminating areas. I think that's a lot of it. You pull up to a spot and you can see the fish pretty darn quick if they're there or not. There's no hiding out anymore.
My take on forward-facing sonar is you obviously don't have to have it. And if you're not a tournament fisherman and you're kind of on the fence, then you're really the only person that can answer whether you want it or not. But you don't have to have it. I feel like I kind of have to have it because I fish competitively. We all do, the three of us. So all of our competitors have it. So you're kind of, if you don't have it, you feel like, I don't have a tool in my tool bag that they do that I might need. But short of that, a guy that doesn't have it that is really good at fishing and uses all the cues that we should use fishing. And there's going to be a lot of days they have advantages over the guy that's staring at live scope. So, for anyone that's out there that's on the fence, you don't have to have it to know how to catch fish.
No.
And I bet so. You said that perfectly about the tournaments that we fish, and we feel like since we fish those tournaments, we have to have it, right? Like it's because we're going to get beat if we don't have it. But I am betting with a lot of money here that 90% of those guys that have it aren't using it to its capability.
Yeah. And I will say
I'm one of them.
Yeah, I am too. And I'll say this though, I don't have it on my John boat yet. I've been kind of waiting to see what Lawrence is doing, and I think I've won 5 or 6 tournaments in the last 2 years at Cedar without forward facing sonar. So,
but you do have spot lock. You can't get rid of that.
I do have spot lock. Yeah, I do have spot lock. So you don't have to have it. It's
I think it's so we've all fished for a long time, and it's a passion of ours, and it's neat to be a part of something. When something new comes out, it's interesting. It's kind of like, okay,
it's a toy.
We can tie a black and blue jig on, we can tie a spinnerbait on, and we could tie a buzzbait on and take those 3 baits to the lake most of the time and catch fish and be happy and catch fish and compete probably. But we're also, the creative inner side of us wants to try a creature bait instead of a jig. And then it wants to try this something else, because when you're really into something, you want to experiment within that field. That's just a human instinct in us. And I think forward facing sonar is another tool in that box. It's another, we don't have to have it. We were catching fish before it. And if suddenly God came down and took all the forward facing sonars off the face of the earth, we would go right back to catching fish again. But at the same time, when you don't need a 90-inch TV, we've got a 42-inch TV and you can see just fine. You don't need a Blu-ray. You've got a DVD. I don't know if anybody has DVD or Blu-ray anymore, but it's just, when you get into something, it's fun to expand on it. It's just part of the culture, I would say. But one of the really cool things about forward facing sonar is seeing, somebody mentioned this, I think Tim mentioned this a while ago, but is seeing the fish behavior. I've laughed a bunch of times when I've seen fish do just funny stuff. And recently, one of the coolest things, seeing how fish corral the shad. That's happening before you had forward facing sonar. But when you actually see it happen in real time, it is sweet. You can see a school of shad, and then you see these like 3 or 4 little fish just kind of cruising, bass kind of cruising. And then all of a sudden they just, all hell breaks loose and they go right into the school of shad, and the shad kind of fold and they go right up to the middle of them.
You got a donut with a couple eyes in the middle.
That's a real thing that happens in the wild. It's been going on since shad and bass were in a lake, but we've never been able to see that. And there's like an entertainment value with forward facing sonar, not so much just catching fish, but actually seeing a wild creature do crazy things underneath the water that we had no idea was going on. I mean, we've read about it. We've seen the diagrams and the pictures in Bassmaster magazine, and this is what they do, but we've not actually seen that. Now we can see all that happen. I think it's really cool.
Yep. Tim makes a comment here. I'd love to have enough free time to dedicate to dialing in my live scope skills. I tell you what, we haven't talked about this, but 5 minutes can turn into an hour and a half out there staring at your live scope.
Oh God, yeah.
I know I've looked around. For one, if you don't have your map up or you're not paying attention and you got your head craned down, for one, you have no idea where you're at. You've been chasing shad for the last hour and a half. That's why I actually put my clock on my Garmin unit specifically for that reason, so I wouldn't just. I had a reference of what time of day it was, because I mean, you get your head down and hours go by in a blink of an eye.
You need a shock collar.
Yeah,
Get you back in line.
I'm going to trolling motor right into a buoy or a dock at one point.
Yeah,
I put the motor in the rocks one day.
I believe it,
because you just weren't paying attention, and I wasn't at Cedar. I was at a different lake, and back end swung around, and my dad's like, hey. I'm like, what? And he's like, I'm in the rocks back here.
Brock says, how many big fish have you stalked and caught? Me personally, this year, I've probably, I don't know. I can say legitimately and honestly, I've probably caught 10 singles, some, I don't know, between 4 and 6 pounds, something like that, where I've just targeted that single fish and kept casting at them until they hit it. But for every one that bit, there's hundreds of them that didn't. And I can't say I actually stalked that fish. It was more like these fish were sitting over a brush pile or out off of a point, and I just kept making that same cast, and the fish didn't move more than probably 30 yards one way or another.
You weren't chasing that fish.
I wasn't actually chasing them down, but that I was targeting and stationary stalking, I guess, a big fish.
I will say I caught my personal best channel cat this year with fishing Sonar.
That reminds me,
a 25-pound channel cat.
25?
It was close to 25. It was a giant channel cat.
Holy! I didn't catch that today. My first fish was a catfish.
Big one?
I'm idling around. I see my shad, and that's the other thing. When you're idling and looking, don't stop and fish just because you see shad, folks. You got to see the bass in the shad, or
that's
off the
huge.
side, whatever.
It's huge.
So anyway, I see what I need to see on the screen. It's like, cool, found him. Turn around, throw my spoon out at him, and about halfway down, dunk, set the hook, and I was like, oh my God, this is a good one. Well, then my line started doing this, back and forth. I'm like, oh crap, I don't think that's a bass. But it was a good one, so I wanted to see it. And it took a while, and I caught, I'm not a catfish expert. It wasn't a flathead, and it was not a channel cat. So I think it was a blue.
Okay.
And it was 15 to 20 pounds every bit, probably.
Good one.
And it hit just like a bass. I mean, it was beautiful. I mean, my spoon went ding, and I set the hook. It was pretty cool.
But did you watch it on Live Scope or not?
No, I saw a group of fish on Live Scope, and I just threw in that area. I did not see this particular fish.
Yeah, that one. So between the big catfish, that was I caught multiple big catfish on Live Scope this year, but it was sitting above a brush pile, and I targeted that fish. I fished for that fish for probably 5 or 6 minutes. I mean, he was a giant out there, obviously. And when he hit, just like you said, just like a bass, he hit a swim jig. And I thought I broke my ribs when I set the hook on him, because I thought I thought I thumped it, and I must have set into the brush pile, like the log of the brush pile, because it did not move. And then it just goes and just starts stripping drag. Like, cool. Oh Lord. But I did catch quite a few big drum over at Kincaid this year.
Really?
Early in the year on Live Scope. That was when I was first learning it. I was getting so frustrated.
Drum are fun to catch.
They are.
What's up, Hammer? Got the old scope spin here.
Is that Dell?
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
We still haven't went down there.
No, we got to make that trip.
I know.
We got to make that trip. Definitely. We got all kinds of trips we got to make.
We do. We got Newton. We got Bull Shoals.
You caught some fish on that the other day, didn't you, buddy?
Yeah, I did. It's a cool bait.
Show that to
we
people.
talked about it last week, but this is a new bait that Jewel came out with called the Scope Spin, and it's designed for targeting fish using forward-facing sonar, it's got a really strong signal. You can see it. Well, first of all, it casts a country mile, and at the end of that country mile, when it does enter the water on your scope, you can see it really good, just because it's a 1 ounce of lead weight. It's a really cool bait. The thing I am going to do with this is I'm going to put some split rings on here and upsize the treble hook, because I had a couple fish that came off on top of the water. And I think they got leverage. And this is a 1 ounce bait. It's really compact. So there's it happened when they shook on top of the water, and you got that 1 ounce weight, and I think it knocked the hooks off. But they were biting kind of funny that day too, Ron. They weren't biting.
Yeah, they weren't jumping in the boat.
Yeah. So I'm gonna leave a couple of them just like this, and then I'm gonna put split rings and upsize the hooks on a couple of them to see if it makes a difference. But it's a really cool bait, and you don't have to just have, it's not live scope necessary type of bait. You can use this in any scenario where you've got a school of fish, and it's really going to start getting better as the water gets colder. In my opinion, right now is the time to start throwing this thing. But it's just another tool. I'll be doing a video on this, and I'll give you my thoughts on it. But it's another tool in the winter arsenal for sure. The link rolling across the ticker there, Baitworks does have these in stock. I checked their website last night. They've got the Jewel Scope Spin. So if you're interested in picking up some of these, use the code in the bottom in the description box, and use THM10. You get you 10% off. But it's pretty cool. I like it, man. I like throwing different stuff and experimenting. It's just the fish haven't seen it because it just came out. So you've got that in your favor, and it's just a matter of figuring out how to fish it and how to make the fish react to it. But yeah, I'll definitely be throwing it some more.
South Jersey has a question. I know it's a little off topic. Are drones illegal or legal to be used in tournaments? I think during practice. I think it's fine during practice, as far as I know.
I think during practice it's fine. Didn't Keith Poche find his backwater with the drone when he won down on, was that the Red River?
Yeah, I think he was down there before the off limits period,
running
using it. And then there's off limits, you can't use it. And then can you use it in actual practice?
I don't know if now we're talking like official practice on Elite Series.
Yeah, right.
Or are we talking official practice on the
the
Wednesday nighter? What's I don't know what the
I don't know.
Well, I'm talking about professional.
If we're talking professional, I would imagine, because I think that may have been part of the controversy of his win down there. Was when did he use the drone? Did he use the drone during official practice, or was it?
Yeah, and he came out and said he did an interview with was it with
BTL?
Was it Castledine or with BTL? Maybe it was BTL. Anyway, he did an interview, and he said, "Yeah, I use that all the time during pre-practice. Doesn't everybody?" And it's kind of like, he's thinking outside the box. You can't really fault the guy. It's kind of smart.
So I imagine the answer would be it's probably banned during.
It's probably banned during official. Yeah,
right.
That's what I was thinking. I think pre cutoff period you can use it, but then in the official practice you can't use it, and during the the no fish period, or whatever they call that. That's my interpretation.
I think that's probably an underutilized resource. I'm just afraid to run a drone over the lake. So
yeah, I would. I can
immediately. I can guarantee it's going to crash.
Crash the drone.
It's going to find the one tree, the one fishing line, the high line, whatever, and it's going
to. Or a bird, a goose.
But they used to, back in the day, they used to. It was very common practice for the pros to hire a local pilot, especially in situations where they're looking for different watercolor, and fly over the bodies of water to get an aerial view of the lake. And then they banned that. So if they ban that, I assume you probably can't use a drone during official practice.
Yeah, I remember that was a big deal.
Real common. Yeah, I've done it. So
you get 2 or 3 guys to pull in some money and hire a pilot and fly over the lake.
Yep.
Hellbass is high.
What's up, Hellbass? He has a nice video out on Mille Lacs I watched today, and Gabe, you'll appreciate this because we put in at this ramp one day, I think. On Mille Lacs this particular day they did their video, there looked like a northwest wind to me. And they put in at Liberty Beach, which is there on the east side. Remember where the Statue of Liberty is?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And they ran up to Miramar, up on the north end, ran across the corner of the lake. And then
Really?
part of his video shows them beating through the waves. It was kind of funny, but they caught some nice smallmouth.
They're about done up there. It's getting ready to get locked up, I think.
There's some ice around the shore. There was a beach side, which is on the south side of the lake. There's ice forming already. So,
Jeez.
But one of the right now is when they catch a lot of big muskie up there, and one of the guides I still follow up there caught a muskie up there today or yesterday or something. So, but,
I agree with South Jersey fishing, having that drone or a bird's eye view. I don't think even for some of the lakes that we fish, just a different perspective of maybe especially right now when the water's low and clear, what does that offshore spot that you've always fished look like from above on a slicked off day with no wind? What can you see out there?
Right.
I think that perspective would be really neat.
Yeah. Well, it's using Google Earth.
Yeah. I mean, I think a huge advantage of a drone is if you're backing, say you're in say you're fishing a 5,000 acre section of a lake and it's got 4 creek arms going in it. You're in one creek and you're trying to cover it. You could fly that drone over into the creek next door and look at it. If you start seeing some bait schooling, you see some surface activity, you see more grass in that creek than, or maybe there's a laydown bite and you're like,
or your competitors are fishing.
Yeah, true. The pressure. You get on the wood bite, laydown bite, you can just fly and look at each one of those creeks and okay, that third creek is a ton of laydowns. I'm going over there.
Now, it would be cool if you could just start marking waypoints. Like if you had a laydown, bloop, 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 just start marking waypoints all the way down through there.
That's coming, man. It's coming.
Yeah, don't give the industry any ideas.
Kidding.
That'll be something else I got.
Rich said it was an east wind.
East wind.
Oh, it was an east wind? Oh, I look like northwest wind. Okay, well, east wind, I understand why they put it in Liberty then.
I think they're going to come out with a submarine drone. Maybe they already have, but something that's small and you can go up underneath the grass mats. So look around and then come back out. That's what they need.
We talked about this at dinner the other night. I had our monthly friends dinner last Friday, and all my buddies are deer hunters. I'm not a deer hunter. So they all had their phones out and they were checking cameras that night. You know, rifle season starts the next day. So they were all geared up. And I said, how cool would it be to have a trail cam that's submergible that would send you pictures of like your favorite offshore spot?
Oh, there's fish in the brush pile now.
Exactly. Like
just sits there and
just sits outside of a brush pile, sits outside of an offshore hump, and then it would like send you pictures to your phone. That
I like it, man. I like it.
That's how cool would that be?
Yeah,
it'd be pretty cool.
Should have been here yesterday. They were here yesterday.
Yeah. Hey, not to change topic, getting kind of back to winter fishing here. What was the water temperature? Was it Sunday you were at Cedar?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I got to fish 3 days last week. It was 62, 63, something like. I'm thinking low 60s, if I remember right.
Low 60s on Sunday.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was 56 to 58 here today. And we got some teens coming for lows for the next week, it looks like. We're going to be in the upper 40s really, really fast.
It's gonna shut them down a little bit until they get used to it, I think. Maybe not so much. Yeah.
The deep fish not as quite as much, but that clear water is going to be helpful for that, though. Clear water will help.
We may have just caught our last frogfish of the year already. Maybe.
I got one more derby left for the year.
It might be over.
What are you fishing?
Cedar, that USA Bassin in December.
Hammy saw 58. 56, 50.
Was that today, Hamilton? I knew he was on the water yesterday. So it's gonna fall quick. So that jerkbait might get really, that suspending jerkbait might get good. I mean, it's good now just because we have clear water and it's always good, but it might get really good, really in an important way here immediately. As fast as that water is going to cool down, which is really this weekend, which is really, it's going to be an unusual cool down. I think the whole Midwest is like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
The weather. So I think that you're gonna start hearing a lot of stories about jerkbait, I think, and an A-rig. All that stuff is just gonna get front and center real quick. And green weeds.
Dang, Rich.
Always, huh?
I feel like I should send you like a Subway gift card or something. He said his last frogfish was October 8th.
They weren't even on a frog bite here in October.
That's a long time ago.
What are you talking about?
Wow. Feel sorry for you. I'll throw it in. If I see 49-degree water and the grass looks good, I'll throw it. I'm not scared to throw it.
Yeah, the
We're gonna
weeds
get
are
one
good.
or two bites.
Yeah, but those 1 or 2 bites are going to be the right ones.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be a 4+ pound.
I don't
And
think so.
I don't care what the weather does. Some of those fish never leave that grass.
I was going to say you could probably punch and catch them.
Right.
Yeah, they
In the dead of winter.
don't all leave the grass. They just don't, especially on cedar.
There's too much grass, and I think that grass holds some warmer water. So
Yeah, you get some sunshine. Even on a cold day, you put some sunshine on the top of the mat. You know,
it's going to start breeding life at that point.
Yeah,
it can be some of the best punching of the year when that water is 51, 52. You know, right there where most people would leave it and be throwing an A-rig or a jerkbait or something. You can sneak in there shallow, and there won't be, like you said, there won't be a lot of good grass left. You'll have to hunt for it, and it'll be smaller little stretches, and most of it will be in little pockets that they go into the north. You know, that the northwest, that type of stuff. Be specific little small areas, but if you know the last place that the bait stays in the grass, some of those last little stretches, you can get a really good punching bite. And you can, you know, I've had some decent days where you'll catch 7 or 10 fish, and they'll be pretty nice fish just with a punching bite. Just get that, just milk that last little punching bite out of it before it goes away.
Yep.
Or just start moving south.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He was in Mexico. I was going to ask you, we were talking about Mille Lacs, and I had a question. I don't think I've ever asked you this before, but what's some of the roughest water you've ever been in, like the sketchiest boat ride situations you've ever been in?
So I'm giving Hellabass, you know, a little bit of a hard time for making that run from Liberty to Miramar, which they didn't do anything wrong. It's just Mille Lacs. Well, one day on the east side of the lake, up north of where we put in there at Liberty, there's an area called Agate Bay. And my buddy Woody, who you met, lived on the south end of the lake in Waukon. And so we had to be it was a DNR meeting. And we had to be at this DNR meeting at, I don't remember, let's just say 3 p.m. or something. So the wind wasn't bad, but it was a little bit of a north wind. So we thought, well, we'll fish our way. We'll start down where he lives on the south end of the lake. We jumped in his Triton and we fished our way all the way up to Agate Bay. And for those who don't know, Mille Lacs, that's probably, Mille Lacs length north to south is about 22 miles long. So that's probably 18 miles, maybe. We fished our way north. Well, the wind was picking up. Well, once you start, you're out in the middle of the damn lake. The wind slowly picked up out of the north, But we weren't paying much attention because we were smoking them. I mean, we smoked them. So we get to the meeting. We go do our meeting thing, and we're going to fish our way back. No, it's rolling. we come out of this meeting and it's rolling, and we got 18 miles or whatever that is with the wind, which is worse, back down to where Woody lives. And we're stupid. So we're like, oh, we can do it. Oh my God. All I can say is thank God Woody's a good boat driver, and thank God for a 4-blade prop. So you
How
can
big
grab
were they?
that wall. Oh, I don't know. You get down in between them, and that's all you saw. And
On both sides?
they don't. Yeah, you just had water on either side of you. And now on Mille Lacs, they don't really get that tall, but they pack really tight. And they're when it gets like that, it's kind of hard to navigate. And we did like this little zigzag pattern back for like 18 miles. Never got to Woody's credit, he never put the front of the boat into a wave. Just
Did you ride the troughs the whole way, or the peaks?
Back and forth. Yeah, you'd find like little angles to take, and it's hard to really kind of explain. You don't go straight. You got to kind of go back and forth. And, there'll always be every 5th or 6th wave or whatever. It depends on the lake. There'll be that one rogue wave. So, you'd find one of those and you'd quarter that and get over it. And then you could kind of then run for a few more waves, and you see that next rogue wave, and you'd kind of angle your way and kind of quarter your way over that. And, you just piecemeal it all the way back, and that was a white knuckle ride. So that was dumb, but
so question, and this may sound like a stupid question. I know it was the waves were big and it was rolling, but was it a rough ride back, or is it just riding the troughs and hanging on for dear life?
No, we didn't take a beating. We were only going, I don't know, 12, 15 miles an hour, as slow as he could run the boat. What you want to do in that situation, you want to, you obviously have to keep the nose of the boat up, and you want to be as slow as you can make that boat go, but be on quote unquote pad. Okay. And a 4-blade prop is really important for that, because you have more bite. And you're really working that engine hard, and you just have to, I don't know how to explain it. You just got to do it. It's easier going into the wind because you can see them coming at you a little better. Going with it is a little tougher. And so you're keeping that, even when you go over the wave, you're still keeping the top of your boat pointed up, and then all the way down through the trough, and you're keeping the boat pointed up, and then until you get to the next wave. Like on the Great Lakes, you can be in 10 footers and you can literally run the troughs.
Right.
And it's actually in some degrees safer to a point. But when they stack tight and you can't really run them, you just got to kind of got to pretend you're a duck and float over the top of them. Is what
Have you been in those 10 footers?
No, I've never been in 10 footers. These were probably legit. Most guys have never been in 4 footers, quite frankly. These were probably legitimate 5 footers, I would say.
Okay.
And that's a lot bigger wave than people realize.
It's a big wave. Yeah, that's a really big wave.
That's a big wave. But the weird thing about Mille Lacs is then we got probably, I can't really explain it. We got within a quarter mile of his house, and it's like it all calmed down. It's like, what the hell? There was a guy fishing not too far from his house. It was just really, really strange. Mother Nature is a strange thing. But that was probably my worst boat ride. But I had a guy who lived on the lake that had been driving in that stuff his whole life, so that made it better. Yeah, it's 100. It's yeah.
Was he nervous?
No, not really. He looked at me and says, "Don't worry, I've done this 1,000 times." It's like, well, that's good. Let's go.
Yeah. It's just intense.
But I don't recommend.
Like, it's like driving in a snowstorm or something. you're tired at the end of it when you make it back. You're not tired because you're taking a beating. It's just it's like so intense that you're
the mental
mentally, you're just drained.
Focus.
Well, it's the focus. I mean, you're driving down, it's sunny and 70 down the highway, and it's fine. You're running 75 mile an hour, 70 mile an hour, whatever it is, and you're fine. But when it comes to driving 35 mile an hour down the same stretch that you've drove from your house to work every single day, but there's, potential for ice, or there's 6 inches of snow on the road. Now it becomes
you watch that temperature gauge on your truck when it's raining.
Oh,
and
God.
It's 33. You're like, okay, I'm fine. But once it gets like 31, you start.
Yeah, you're like, you get nervous. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so from traveling as much as I do with work, you roll down the window and you go, nope, it's still wet. We're good. Yeah. The coldest part of the car is going to be the outside of the car where the wind's hitting it. And if it's not frozen there, we're good.
Yeah. The worst beating I ever took on Mille Lacs were in waves that I thought I could run, and I was wrong. I had a day off. I didn't have a guide trip. I was in this little area called Twin Bays, and it's kind of protected by this little point. And I only had probably 1.5 miles, 2 miles. Well, I put in there at the Thames River where we put in for your last day up there on the south end there, Gabe. Mm-hmm. And I was fishing up in this little protected little spot, catching them. And the wind picked up out of the northwest, which I knew it was supposed to. I didn't have very far to go, but I had to, when I left, I had to navigate around this buoyed rock reef, kind of going into the wind and then back around this rock reef and then back down to Malone Island. And I was fishing, I was catching them, I was looking out there and the wind's picking up, and I'm like, crap, it's getting pretty lousy out there. So I was like, I better go. So I strapped everything down, and I had to quarter kind of northeast against this northwest wind. And I got around this rock reef I had to get around. Okay, I was like, oh, cool, this ain't too bad. So I got a little cocky. And I got on the gas a little bit. Well, I mean a little bit. I'm only going 25 or 30 miles an hour. And I'm catching these rollers just perfect going with them. I go over the first two, and then I see the third one, the rogue one, and I barely had time to say, oh, shit. And for 1 second, my entire boat and myself were completely underwater. I mean, I speared it to beyond spirit. And you just keep your foot on the gas and you just drive out of it. And I was lucky. My grass were all folded over on the front. My rods were all tangled up, but they stayed under the straps. And fortunately, I didn't. A lot of guys will break a windshield doing that. That was that'll wake you up. Yeah, that'll wake you up.
I hit one in the summer doing that in my Ranger on Kentucky.
You bury one?
I buried one.
Oh, I got a Kentucky Lake story.
And when it hit, like it was the middle of summer. It was hot out, but when it hit, it takes every ounce of breath that you think you have in your body out of you.
Yeah.
And now you're shaking. If it's your first one, that was my first one that I hit. I came around that corner and I just boom right through it.
Yeah. Hey, shout out to Todd at Christmas Clatter. Christmas is fast approaching, and he's got a really good YouTube channel. If you guys are into Christmas stuff, Christmas is his deal. I think he's got like 27 Christmas trees in his house. He really gets into it. He's got a lot of good Christmas content. He has a podcast as well. So go check him out if you're looking for some festive stuff. Back at Kentucky Lake, I remember a buddy of mine, Greg Schillbein. He's not with us anymore, but we went over to Kentucky Lake. I just got my Ranger 518, and he wanted to catch some smallmouth on a fly rod on the fly. So I'm like, that's cool. I know a couple little stretches on the LBL side where I've caught some smallmouth in the past, and we just drove in the morning, drove over there, got on the water early. And actually, no, we didn't. We got on there a little bit late, but anyway, we go out and do our thing, and he's, it was kind of slow. We weren't getting a lot of bites, but he had taken a couple beers with him. So we were talking about spearing away, right? So he pops open a beer and he's relaxing. It was summertime, I think. And we're coming across the lake and it's a little bit rough. I remember him holding this beer and all of a sudden we spear a wave. This wave comes over the front, takes that beer and just launches it out of the boat. And I think his hat went off. He lost his sunglasses. I was behind the console, so I was okay. You know, it kind of just went around me and down on my lap and stuff. But I looked over at him. It just looked like he got slapped by like a whale tail or whatever. But he lost his beer, he lost his sunglasses, and it happened so quick. You know, we were just we were doing everything like we were supposed to, kind of gliding over him, and then that one was a little bit taller than the other one, and it pulled us down or something, and just.
I mean, and I think it happens to everybody at some point, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're a rookie like I was, or whether it was a 30-year vet doing it. I mean, the first one that I speared riding shotgun was in a BFL, and it was a guy from Michigan. Like, this guy's got to know how to drive big water, right? But as soon as we took off that morning, I knew that, like, there's a good chance we're going to speak. He was running nose down the whole way down Kentucky Lake. And we came around a corner, and I knew the wind was blowing out of the west, and we came around that corner, and they were stacked up, and it just right through it. And it was a cool morning. I just had a hoodie on and my bibs. I didn't have my raincoat on, and I took all of that water just straight down my bibs first thing in the morning on the first stop.
So, yeah, when you said not every boat setup really has the ability to do it. And that's where the 4-blade prop comes in. But when you said, you're slapping like this, and most of the time that's fine. But like on that trip back I was talking about with Woody driving, he had such good bow control. That's what you're looking for, is bow control in that really rough water, especially going with the waves. That's the toughest one. But if you can have enough traction where you can keep that nose up as you go up and as you go down the wave, that's the hard part, keeping the bow up so you're not doing this.
Yeah.
That way you have that nose of the boat where you want it for each time you enter each wave. That's kind of the key. And not every boat, honestly, is set up to be able to do that. But Woody had his set up where he could do it, and he was a master at it. And it takes the only way no one knows how to drive that way when you're born. You got to be in some rough water to learn how to do that.
You got to take a few over the front, a few over the back to figure out that.
Yeah. And I'm adequate at it, but guys like my buddy Woody and a lot of other guys that fish big water all the time, there's a level of that is that I'm not at.
So you're saying it's kind of like riding a wheelie?
Yeah, exactly. You're kind of riding a wheelie over the tops of the waves. You're keeping that bow up the whole time.
But you're using the boat to break the wave when you hit.
Yeah, you've got your hull up, so it's you're not hitting the wave with the front of the boat. You're using the V of the hull to you're kind of doing this and going slow, as slow as you can go, and keep the nose up.
Yeah, and another thing is the length of the boat, like an 18-foot boat versus a 20 or 21-foot. Not so much in the scenario you're talking about. When the waves get big, it doesn't matter so much. But on those, just that chop, like the small 1-footers or so, if you've got enough boat to kind of straddle that, you can stay right on top of them, just skip, make a really smooth ride out of what would be a rough ride in an 18-foot boat. That 518 was a good boat. It was nimble, but you had to really pay attention. You didn't get that straddle length.
You were almost just too short to
really get up on top of stuff and go across it. It was a little bit tricky.
Especially on Kentucky lakes and bigger lakes like that.
Right. Where the waves are not really consistent.
They're too spread out.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's like the Ozarks too. You get that at Kentucky Lake with the pleasure boaters.
Right.
And you can't plan any of that.
You got waves that just are a mesh.
They're just coming from every direction and they're swirling.
Or you got that boat that's been running for the last 30 miles at just over an idle, and it's a 50-footer, and he's throwing an 8-foot wake out.
Oh, I know.
And it's random, and you're doing 70 down the lake, and you just go, woo.
Yeah, he's going 12
Yeah,
miles an
hold
hour.
on.
Yep.
Yeah,
12 miles an
You know,
hour.
that's one thing that I never mastered when I had my boat is like I could, and even riding with guys, I could never see that wave. I don't know if it's just a learned trait, but I could never see a giant wave like that. Just not my eye.
We saw
Yeah,
a pontoon boat with dual 450s or 425s on it at Lake of the Ozarks. I got it.
What?
It's in one of my videos. He had
Are you
425 Suzukis, 2 of them on a pontoon boat.
Oh my
It's
God.
in a slip. Yeah. I mean, you pretty much.
He's first
I think you
party
fly.
cove.
I could see you actually gliding, like
Yeah, getting some weight, air, and
hydroplaning. Yeah.
Well, back to fishing.
Yeah. Let's.
Was there anything else you want to cover specific about winter fishing?
I got a few things written down there, but you know, I think we've been on here for almost 2 hours. We covered a lot of good stuff. I enjoyed the live scope stuff. Kind of diving into that. We kind of did a deep dive on that. Yeah. Well, I got some other stuff written down, but we'll get you back on here in another month or so, and it'll be nice and cold, and we'll really be thinking about winter fishing then.
Well, anyone that's curious in our area, there's several. Well, as Gabe can tell you, there's some big schools of fish that have gathered here at Egypt, and it's a good opportunity to go out there and play with them. And I've been catching them on the spoon, of course, A-rig. I've been trying not to throw the A-rig just because you're going to catch them on it. That's not so I've been trying to use that spoon more and more. There's a good video that Gabe and I did last year on how to throw the spoon. Might be a good review for if there's any of those high school kids watching.
Definitely, I'll try to repost that.
I highly recommend learning. I know it was a weak point in my game for a long time, and I finally just I got to do this. And that was one of my favorite ways to catch fish. I just it's a blast. It's fun finding them on the graph and throwing to them and catching them. And I'm not talking about live scoping. I'm just talking about idling and finding the schools of fish and bait fish. And it's actually, I find it really relaxing. Yeah.
You ever speared a wave in your Vexus?
No, I have not. That one I was talking about was when I still had my 521 Ranger. I have not. I only had my Vexus on Mille Lacs that 1 year though, so I didn't have. And I'll tell you what, when there was a north wind, I went and put in at the north side. When there was a south wind, I put in on the south side, and that was it. I didn't play any games with it. And when you got clients, you can't play games with that stuff anyway, because you just trailer and go to the other ramp where it's calm.
Well, why beat your equipment up and why beat yourself and your customers up? I mean,
oh yeah, I don't know. We had there's a thing called residual waves. So like if you have a big blow one day, those waves, they just don't go away right away. You ever run down the lake and your waves hit the shore and they come back at you?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you get that on big bodies of water like that. And there was some residual, it was dead calm out, but there was a big blow the day before. And so everyone put in south end. There was guys coming in with broken trolling motors. And I mean, that big water will just beat you up. And guys were out there running that looked glass calm, but there was 4 foot barge rollers out there from the residual waves out there, and they weren't seeing them, and they were just destroying their equipment. I had a client and his son, and some guy came in, his troll motor's half hanging off his boat, and he goes, "Man, I don't recommend taking that kid out there." And I was like, "Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Well, I know what's going on." And we went out there, and if you go slow, you just go over them like a duck. I mean, they don't beat you up if you go slow, but if you don't see them coming, it's like hitting a barge wake. And but it was kind of seeing all these guys come in with all their broken stuff.
It probably makes
water's
the client really nervous when they see that, though.
Yeah, well, I actually had a repeat client that day, thank God, so he knew I wasn't an idiot out there. But I always respected that lake. I always erred on the side of caution, no doubt about that.
I think that's a good rule to follow 365 days of the year on any lake that you put your boat in on.
Yeah, it only takes 2 feet of water to drown. You know what I mean? So
I remember coming out of a cove on Lake of the Ozarks with Mike, my buddy Mike Marfell, and this was probably 5 years ago. It's before he had his nitro. He had a Ranger. It was an 18-foot Ranger, and it was a calm, beautiful, cool day. The kind of day where there's very few pleasure boats out, and he's a jig fisherman. So we went in one side of the cove and skipped every dock and came out the other side. And then we were idling out, got up on pad, and we're coming out of this cove, and we're making a little turn. And there was this rogue wave. I don't remember any boats going by or hearing any boats or anything, but there's this big, slow roller, probably like a 4 or 5 foot roller, just came out of nowhere. And before we saw it, we were on top of it, and we jumped.
Were you running?
We came totally out of the water.
But you were running.
Yeah, we were up on pad. We were just starting to really climb in speed. So we're probably 40, 45 miles an hour. It wasn't a super fast boat.
Doesn't matter.
Like high 50s was top end on it. But we hit that thing. We were going up it, and we realized what was happening. He backed off the throttle, but it was too late. And I don't know how high we got out of the water, but everything was out of the water for sure.
A little star
came down. We came down, bam, and it just everything just shook. I mean, I was feeling around in my mouth for like missing teeth, chiclets, and it was, and then you hit the next one, boom, and it starts all over again.
I think we've all had that situation.
God, it's painful.
Oh yeah,
it hurts.
It happens. It happens. That's why those old pros have had back surgery.
I was thinking the same thing.
I mean,
I mean, that spine just goes.
Just
they start off in their pro career. They're 18 to 25 years old. They're 6'3". They retire from pro fishing. And they're 5'8". It's like, what happened? I rode the boat for too long.
Yeah. And they got size 17 feet.
Yeah,
it just pushed everything out. Jay says sounds like Ron needs to come speak at the high school event December 10th at Vianney High School. 150 kids, 5 classrooms, discussion for 45 minutes per session.
Where's that at?
Up St. Louis area, Vianney. I'm thinking
a little bit. I know all Illinois, they usually try and fish water where you can have that 12-inch limit.
Jay, we'll talk about that. I was talking to Rob the other day about that. I'm seriously thinking about going up there and doing that. It sounds like a really good time. If I can get off of work. So we'll hash it over. Maybe it'll work out. That's it. It was a great stream. It's good hanging out with you, Ron.
Absolutely.
And are you fishing Thursday? Do you know?
As long as it's not ridiculous outside, why not? The answer is yes. every day.
Okay. So I'll get a hold of you. I got Thursday off. I might, if you're going to go, I might come over there and jump in a boat with you.
All right. Let's do it. Let's just plan on it.
Okay. Next week, you actually mentioned him earlier. We got Bradley Hallman coming on next week. So
do you really?
Yeah.
I like him.
I just sent him a message, and actually I texted Panger, and I thought, hey, you think Hallman would come on our little Pee-wee live stream out of Southeast Missouri? And he's like, yeah, send him a message. So I sent him a message. He got back with me right away.
Pee-wee anymore.
But
you're sort of little Pee-wee now.
Sort of. Okay, I'm a medium-sized Pee-wee. Okay.
I mean, look at where some of your viewers are from. They're from all over the place.
It's growing, man, and it's a lot of fun. I think JB coming on the show has helped it a lot, and then having the regulars like yourself come on, it's just like it's a good little community, man. There's people show up every Monday, and it just keeps growing. It's pretty cool. But yeah, so next week, if you guys are on here and got everybody that's on here, we'll do this every Monday. If you're new to the stream, it's a weekly thing, Monday at 7:30, and Bradley Hallman's going to come on there. So I'm excited to talk to him, hang out with him, and see what's going on.
That's a good,
yeah, should be a good show. Should be a good show. And so that's it. Let's wrap this up. Reminding everybody to go check out Baitworks. Use the code, get you a 10% off their order. Support the channel, and that's really it. Ron, I'll get a hold of you and jump in the boat with you Thursday.
Sounds good. Yeah, everyone out there listening, go fishing. It's a great time of year to go fishing. It really is. Great time of year.
Yeah.
Just wear you some gloves, sock cap.
Yeah.
Long johns.
Boots.
All right. We're out of here. Thanks, everybody.
See you, boys.